Evolutionary, episode 609. Today we're going to be doing Mike Rashid Steroid Cycle. Mike Rashid, he's a guy on social media. What I like about him right off the bat is he does a lot of motivation, inspiration. He doesn't, put others down. He's very positive. I liked it. It's kind of like the thing, Rich Piana back in the day, even though Rich Piana had a lot of demons going on, and he said some things he shouldn't have said. At the end of the day, he was always about positivity and being positive, and that's what Mike Rashid is really good at. So we're going to talk about Mike Rashid, his life, his career in this one. I got Mobster with me. We're going to talk about his social media influence, diet, training. Mobster is going to dive deep into his training. We're also going to speculate on his steroid cycles based on what we know he likes and what he's talked about. So let's talk about his early life and career first. And look, first off, he was born in 1982. Currently, his stats are 5'11", 225, but he has lost some weight in the past couple of years. He's got a very lean body fat, very, very low body fat. So I've seen some pictures of him. I would say his body fat was definitely well under 10%. So he stays lean year round. Got a really good physique when it comes to that. So growing up, Mike learned work ethic and labor through his father. So he would do a lot of outdoor activities, chop wood, running soft surfaces, using trees to train. And I used to do a lot of that stuff too. When I used to come home from school, the school bus would drop me off and they had a tree out front, a tree with a branch going across. It was like perfect. So every day after school, I'd put my book bag down and I'd jump up and grab that tree branch and I would just do as many pull-ups as I could till failure. That was kind of the thing I did every day. And over the course of years, obviously, I could do more and more pull-ups. And then once I got into my 20s, I was able to do 50, 60 pull-ups, no problem. So it's the same thing. So really, fitness starts at a young age. That muscle memory, that body memory should start at a young age. And that's good that his dad got him exposed to that. So that's a really good thing to see. So he was able to build a very strong body in his early teenage years. He used that to do Golden Gloves as a teenager. So he was a really, really good boxer. Once he got into his 20s, he wanted to push himself in bodybuilding. 28 years old, he won first place at the 2010 NPC Mid-Michigan Natural Bodybuilding Championships. So he also enjoyed a passion for powerlifting, and he's put up some impressive numbers. He's got 480 pounds on the bench press and over 600 pounds on the deadlift with proper form. And the thing is, it's not him just making up numbers. We see, and you can just go on social media and say, yeah, I did this much weight, did that much. He actually has videos of him doing this, and he's honest about it. So, and people have been around him when he's done it. So he's extremely lean, extremely strong, very, he's been an athlete his whole life. And that's what you have to do. I mean, if you have kids or nieces, nephews or something, get them into fitness from a young time. And that's what Mike Rashid had that influence of doing from a young age. Go ahead, Mobster.
Yeah, I mean, let me comment on a couple of things there, Steve. Number one is I believe he's dropped 30 pounds. So you say 225, but you said about him dropping some weight. I believe he was to say 30 pounds from a peak, certainly when he was more muscular, bigger, etc. Yeah, number one, so that's number one. Number two, 100% agree with Steve. We talk about making certain things habits, whether that's exercise, diet, and whatever else. And if it's a habit, if it's ingrained into you in a positive way, because these should be good habits like good food, proper training, and so on and so forth. They should be things that you do for life. And so the argument is definitely supported by the idea of having, especially a positive influence of a father figure, father for sure, whatever, encouraging you, supporting you in your training, and especially when you're younger. So that's absolutely true. I also recall, Steve, because I think I followed him some years ago, but certainly not recently. And a few videos that I'd seen, we're talking 5-6 years ago now, he was way more. There was obviously pictures and videos, like you say, with the heavy lifting, but there was also a certain element of, I believe he liked to be quite functional. And so this is not just being conditioned and strong, as I am, arguably, to push in one direction on bench or one direction on squats, but the ability to go out there and do other things and not get those tweaky, horrible injuries. So it was something that he was probably educating people more on that particular side of stuff. when we talk about training, as we will do shortly, one of the things that I believe he's very good at now, and I made sure to do some pre-show research on this, and in fact, we're probably going to do a similar one on someone else shortly after. And this is the ability. The videos I've seen now is him not just working out with a buddy or whatever else, but demonstrating the necessity of good form. And again, I'm thinking, because I don't recall him certainly recently or when I watched him before, maybe there's been stuff in there in between, but I don't think we really talked about him getting injured or fucked up in any particular way. And that's come from having good form, again, arguably ingrained with good education right from the get-go, Steve. And there's also, I mean, as you know, I'm a fan of Iron Game history, and the number of super crazy old time strongmen that started with pieces of wood or stone and doing stuff around the house with the dad or whatever else as a means of encouraging their strength it's fantastic to hear that even in modern times, even with people like Mike Rashid, that's that element, that sort of encouragement, that sort of almost fun and play at strength, whether it's pushing a log over, picking a log up, showing your dad how much weight you can lift with buckets of sand or whatever. That I like that aspect to it, and that support is something for our younger listeners perhaps to think about. Maybe when they have kids, when they've got grandkids, maybe they can be the great uncle that sort of helps the kids or cousins, nephews, nieces, etc. to work out. So that's super cool. Back to you for the next bit.
Yeah, let's talk about our social media influence, and I'll bring in Mobster as well. This, let me kind of go over the base um, of what's going on here. He has a website, MikeRashid.com. You can go on there and check it out. But he really, as a social media influencer, like I said at the beginning, I like his approach to things. He doesn't
Yes.
use clickbait like other people. He doesn't put other people down. He doesn't bully people to get clicks. Doesn't create these fake wars with other influencers. So he
Yes.
started out in a positive way, working with other guys like CT Fletcher, who are also among those same people who want to motivate, who want to impress. You watch their videos, you know, you see it pumps you up to go work out. Then you go work out and you're working out and you're thinking about that video. You're thinking about that pump that you're seeing from a Mike Rashid video. And it really pumps you up to go another set, another rep. So that's a good thing. Another thing he has, I'll bring you in, Mobster, in a bit on his website. Currently, if you want to check it out, is he got a $5,000 giveaway fitness challenge. He also offers a Fred Challenge app and a monthly plan. Now, I don't know much about the monthly plan. A lot of times, these guys online, they have these monthly plans, and really, you're just basically giving them money for nothing. So I don't know what he does on the monthly plan, but I will say that it's not expensive. So if you're curious about it, maybe try it out and see if it helps you. But it's called an Alpha Shred Challenge app is what you can download for him. And he's extremely active all over, the Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, which is a big thing now. Do you use Snapchat, Mobster? Do you
No,
use
God knows
Snapchat?
for young people.
Yeah.
Young
Yeah, that's what
people.
I was gonna say. Like the older generation has no clue but now everybody, if you're under
No,
like 35,
it's
everybody
all
now
too much.
yeah. Nobody uses Facebook anymore under
Yeah,
35. It's all your generation. So, but he has it all covered. So YouTube as
probably.
well. So I think the younger guys use Snapchat and YouTube, and then the older guys, maybe the middle age people use Instagram, and then the older use Facebook and Twitter, which will be dead in 5 years. So another thing too.
Yeah, it's probably there's
Yeah,
probably more to do with the simple fact that we want to stick to one or two channels. We don't want to have 47 channels, Steve. There are
but
there are others that will
yeah,
come after
he has you
Snapchat.
covered no
There's so
matter
many.
which.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And then look, I'll bring you in, Monster, but let me just go
yeah.
over his businesses. He's got books, training and diet programs, clothing, supplements, and more stuff as well. So typical stuff that these guys do. They build up a big following. They get a lot of people following them, and then they start selling, the clothing line and the supplements and all the stuff. And people, I don't think that you make very much money doing that, but it's some extra cash for him. At least it gives him some incentive to keep putting out videos. So that's the way it works. So what do you think about Mike Rashid's
Well,
social
I'll
media?
tell you what I think, Steve. I mean, there's a great argument to be made, and I'm going to echo your thoughts about CT Fletcher as well, without sounding too insulting, because it's going to sound a bit, but it isn't. Certainly not the intention. So here's the thing, right? First off, I'm going to call him an early adopter of social media. When you go back 5 or 10 years, he was fucking huge on social media. huge stuff. And got so much attention that he ended up in magazines. And I don't just mean bodybuilding magazines, I mean other magazines that you was typically see on a newsstand when you might not see a bodybuilding magazine. And this is because he put himself out there and was an early adopter of social media, and certainly made a good deal of money in the past when no one else was, or very few people was. And I'm going to include Rich Piano in that particular thing. Rich knew, for want of a better phrase, how to work this shit. So people that he's worked with when Rich was alive, and even the silly arguments and bullshit that he got into, he was encouraging those same people. This is what you need to do for social media. These are the kind of videos you need to produce. These are the kind of photographs you need to be putting up on Instagram, and so on and so forth. And I believe Mike here has had a handle on that way ahead of most other people. So certainly when very few people were making any money out of social media, he was. That's number one. So number two, and like I said, this is the part that's going to sound a little bit insulting, but it's not meant to be. CT Fletcher is motivational, if for no other reason, just the way he talks. It's still your motherfucking set. There's no bullshit. You get in there, you work your ass off, you get a pat on the back. Now you have to remember where CT Fletcher was born, arguably one of the worst places you can possibly live in Los Angeles. He certainly lived in that particular, even if he wasn't born there. And to get out of that situation and become a positive role model, and I'm going to talk about specifically a positive role model for young black men, but then obviously become an even bigger role model for every kind of person, Asian, Chinese, white, whatever else, just by making sure that these people understand the harder you work, the more successful you are. And I'm going to include Mike in that as well. Even now, the way that he talks, and you said this earlier on, the way that he talks on camera in his videos and the way that he comes across is an educational and positive way. Now we know, because we're not going to avoid that, we know that there was a negative, and the negative was a business mistake, and the negative was being involved in a gym with the same name as the one that CT Fletcher had, with permission. Don't worry about it, but brother, you're good to go. You can call your gym the same as my gym, and the association, because they're both positive black role models for society, and as I said, certainly outside that social group, into the whites, the Chinese, the Asians, whatever else. You're out there kicking ass. You're educational. You're out there putting out a positive message, etc., etc. The business mistake was quite simply they allowed upstairs, meaningfully or otherwise, to be a steroid distribution point. And of course, that got busted. And by association, and I remember the videos and seeing some of these news clips or whatever else, and him having to explain himself on camera. So someone wants to rent the space upstairs. That softens the blow that we're paying with bills, because hardcore gyms don't make money. This is not just him. This is me as talking as well. And by association, you're fucked, because there's a steroid lab upstairs. Oh, you must have known they were distributing steroids. Maybe, maybe not. Then, of course, you've lost that rent money, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, it's difficult. But for the most part, absolutely tip-top at putting out the social media stuff. Let's talk about the diet now, Steve.
All right, so Mike was one of the big influencers out there to start pushing for fasting and once a day eating. It's called the OMAD diet, and I've heard the terms used, snake diet, but basically it's where you eat one meal a day. That's it. And this was back in 2017 where he started to talk about this. And at the time, it was considered more controversial, a fad, or silly. But we've seen actually Mr. Olympia champions who do fasting. Big Ramy, Hadi Chupon. They do it for religious reasons. They do it for cultural reasons. And Mike in this situation was doing it for health reasons. And he has shown, really, he's actually been able to put on more muscle mass, lean muscle mass, strength, and he's been able to keep his body fat low by following this type of diet. And he's talked about Dr. Jason Fung, who I recommend you guys check out his books. You know, I don't agree with everything he talks about, but his books are excellent because they talk about studies and they talk about how our bodies work when it comes to nutrition. And it'll blow your mind because it goes against a lot of things that we hear, you know, a lot of the bro science we hear. So behind what Mike Rashid says is, look, humans historically, they've only eaten once or twice a week. So eating once a day isn't that hard. So the nice thing about his videos is he doesn't preach it. And this is some of the things that I try my best to do on the forums and Mobster also does a good job of that too. But we see that difference with social media influencers. Some of them want to preach an ideology, but the thing is, it's the same concept by the person who knocks on your door and wants to recruit you into their religion, or their ideology or whatever. It doesn't work to preach to people, to push people, because people are going to push back. So his approach is something that I really like as well. And it's something that I've, with my psychology background, know. And this is the basis behind it. It's like if you have a teenager at home and you're their parent and you tell the teenager, don't do this, don't do that. What do you think is going to happen? They're going to want to do it even more. They're going to want to be rebellious. So in this case, it's one of those things when you approach someone and you educate them about something without being preachy, without being forceful, without being a fascist or a dictator about it, they're going to come around. And that's another approach that I like about his thing. But he's opened up so many people to fasting, and specifically intermittent fasting and time restricted eating through that approach. And I have a lot of respect for that. I don't know if Mobster, you want to touch on that really quick, but we really
Yeah, on
need to get
that,
into the
I'll
training.
talk
Touch
about
on it really, really
exercising
quick. Yeah.
next. But yeah, one just comment on that particular, Steve. How many times have me and you talked about the human beings and nature and the fast and famine and all that kind of stuff? And we're not really that much developed from primitive man in terms of our physiology when it comes to nutrition. So he's dead on point in that particular regard, stuff that me and you've discussed multiple times on podcast. Let me talk about training now, Steve, briefly, right? So great educator. He did a video which I watched for the show, showing you exactly how to do this particular movement. Ironically, it was a famous arm workout that lots of the younger listeners will love. And it was very much making sure that you got the nuances of certain exercises and different tricep movements and different bicep movements and educating the people. One of the comments he made at the beginning, and I'll repeat this now briefly, is what he called it prison style, using whatever was there at hand. Meaning, if you get to the gym and that piece of equipment you like is not available, go to something else, do what's there. When he talks about prison style, he's talking about how in prison, guys do press ups with buddies on their back. They'll do curls with bags full of water. They'll do chin ups like in the Terminator movie where she's pulling herself up and down on the bedstead by putting it on its side and just basically getting your shit done. And him and a buddy have a hell of a workout and they're grinding out. And it's short rest, lots of fucking tension, drop sets, lighter weights, etc., and just doing the whole goddamn thing. You don't, like Steve says, 45, 50 minutes. I train longer than that, Steve, but my arm workouts are 25 minutes, and they're fucking heavy as fuck, right? So it's not necessarily 3 hours in the gym, 10 hours in the gym, 7 days a week. Go in there, get it done, don't fuck around. And there's no crazy heavy stuff he talks about. He doesn't do the heavy stuff now, so it's way more about the effort versus the sets. Of course, back in the day, he took his time for heavy benching and squatting and deadlifts and so on and so forth. And talks about, even now, preferring free weights over machines. And so, for example, in the workout that they do, cables was the last thing that they did, Steve. Literally the last thing. So, again, make sure, listen, I don't like to see people overcomplicating things with fantastic exercises when the basics still work, which is what Mike's talking about. You can train with less than ideal conditions using whatever the fuck is to hand, because prison trial training has proved that. It's just get in there and get it done. It's not nice, it's not comfortable, it's not always pretty, it's not sexy, but it works. And he proves it works. He shows that it works because he still has an amazing physique. His body, especially, I don't know what's happened to his body's legs, but his upper body was very impressive for a light fella. And they're not fucking around, Steve. I think the video was more or less live. I think if there was any cuts, there was very few cuts. And it was a half hour, and they did multiple tricep and bicep exercise. And it was one thing after another. Pump, pump, pump. Can't lift the goddamn bar anymore. Your turn. I think they also started with another tip before we move on. And it was a you go, I go. So the time that they rested on Skull Crushers, there are 2 benches, was the time that it took the other person to do their set. There was no hanging around. When the other fella could only do 3 reps, that was it. And he handed it back, and it's your turn to do whatever the fuck you can. That style is brutal. It's not talking. There's no mobile phones. There's no going to the toilet and making sure you look good. There's no fucking around with your hair. It's get in there, get it done, and get out with good form. So I really, really like that. I'm going to move on now, Steve, to steroids, right? Now, as I said at the early part of the show, it's down, right? So we know, because we've discussed this in the past, And we've talked about what we thought he was on before. So I'm just going to throw these numbers out there and then I'm going to tweak them for the listener because I'm going to say what worked in the past would work now, but he doesn't need to be the size that he was. That's for him. That's for function. He doesn't have to be doing the crazy numbers because he doesn't want to. There might be an element, and Steve talks about this with me in the pre-show, of health, meaning don't need to do the heavy shit for his ego anymore. He's gone lighter, he wants to be more functional even than he was in the past and so on. So these are what we talked about previously on Evo. We were talking about trenbolone in Amphate, and we were saying 500 milligrams a week. You're on Instagram, you're on YouTube, you need to look good, crazy, and you're doing crazy fucked up shit in the gym. So Tren would have almost certainly been there. I'm going to say now, Steve, if he still uses Tren, it won't be all year round, but certainly we're probably looking at maybe 300 milligrams a week versus the 500 back in the day. Equipoise, he still looks good, Steve. He's got great skin. The whole thing's going on, good shape. He still looks like a muscular fella. And if you saw them in the gym, you'd still be impressed. So I could still see him EQ. But what we're thinking at his biggest and his strongest, most muscular, best looking, whatever you want to call it, back in the day would be 800 milligrams. I'm going to say, Steve, 300. 300. Again, this is more about getting once or twice a year, getting into crazy shape. He does challenges that we've talked about. You can check out his website to see what the challenges are. He still looks in good condition, but does he need to be on 800 milligrams a week now, Steve? No, I would say a lot less. Testosterone cypionate, 1,000 milligrams a week. We know there's always going to be some sort of testosterone in pretty much any pro or person who's making something like he was, especially before, to a lesser degree now, a living from the sport of looking good. And we were thinking the higher end would have been 1,000 milligrams a week in that time when he was 255, 260 pounds. I'm going to say, Steve, he might, if there's 1,000 milligrams back in the day, I wouldn't be at all surprised if we're still looking at a lower dose for the most of the year, but every so often taking it up to 500 milligrams. I could see that being there or thereabouts. There's going to be certain times of the year he wants to be more muscular, bigger, more functional, doesn't need to be on gear year round. I would actually argue Steve is probably on some sort of TRT now, just by the fact that he was doing steroids back in the day and had to look a certain way and probably was way too much time on, not enough time off between cycles. So I'm thinking there's probably going to be an enanthate or cypionate at TRT dosages, but when he is on cycle, when he is looking to get a little bit more muscular in shape for certain times of year, I'm going to guess top end would probably around 500 milligrams. Cardarine, Steve, we know don't need to do more than 20 milligrams. Great, again, strength, right? We know specific strength, Steve. Anavar, 100 milligrams a day on cycle back in the day. I've talked about that a million times. And in combination with everything else that he's doing, you're probably looking at the 50, maybe 60 milligrams now, Steve. Any thoughts on that before we finish?
Yeah, so I like this cycle that was put together, and I definitely, the thing is, when it comes to trend, there's a good chance that he and other of these social media influencers and fitness have done trend and done trend and done trend. It's going to be the most popular one to use, and the reason for trend is trend. Look, a trend can change physiques. Guys run trend, and I've seen some crazy transformations on trend. Even guys who don't even know really how to train or diet have gotten away with using trend. Their body just reacted perfectly to it. So I have a lot of respect for trend itself, and you should definitely, if you haven't used trend before, definitely use it. But you need to respect it as well. And I have a lot of respect for trend because of the side effects. So using 500 milligrams a week for him, that's like a light snack. It wouldn't surprise me if he had used more of Tren,
Maybe.
because yeah. But I mean, I think
Yes.
this would be a good cycle that he would have used. So 500 milligrams is definitely a very, very potent dose. But I want to be surprised if he used a little more here and there, maybe up to 800 or 1,000 milligrams even. And then the
Certainly back in the
equipoise.
day, so 600-pound deadlift with he's kind of got a small frame, but a muscular frame. So he's not a giant, thick jointed kind of person, and he's
No,
not
no.
naturally a 300-pounder. So no, certainly you could be right, especially when he was pulling the 600 deadlift, 460, close to 500-pound bench. I'd agree. But now, 30 pounds lighter, I'm going to say that we're looking down from those numbers. So definitely an idea of what he was doing before, and Steve could well be right with the trend, but a little bit less now because he doesn't need to do that now. There's an argument to be made, Steve, in terms of his age, limitations. You're not going to hold on to 200, 300 pounds of muscle all the fucking time. He's not stupidly old. He just doesn't need, maybe for himself, maybe to make a living, maybe for his ego, to be as big as he once was. So arguably, there might also be health implications. And again, I think he's pushing, as you said, with the diet stuff, a healthier lifestyle from even from the day one, but certainly more now. And that might be an appreciation that sometimes comes to you when you're older, to value your health more and put that more, as you said earlier on, the positive message out there in terms of, so yeah, this is what I needed to do when I was doing the crazy shit. I don't need to do that now. So what he was doing when he needed to be crazy strong, yes, versus what he does now when he needs to be the way that he is now.
This is an affordable cycle too, aside from the Anavar. 100 milligrams a day of Anavar is going to be really expensive. But other than that, it's affordable. The Tren isn't that expensive. The Equipoise isn't that expensive. Testosterone is definitely not expensive. The Cardarine, nowadays, you could buy a pack of Cardarine, which will last you a month for like $60 from a good source. So it's not an expensive cycle that he put together here, except for the Anavar. The Anavar, 100 milligrams a day, is definitely going to hit the wallet. So if you wanted to go like a cheaper route and do a cycle similar to this, you could swap out the Anavar for a T-Bol or even a Proviron, and that would give you some good results. Winstrol would be an option too, but I wouldn't go too heavy on the Winstrol because you want to be careful stacking in Winstrol with Tren, because a lot of side effects, headaches, hair loss, stuff like that would really multiply. So these are some good options. Testosterone sip, 1,000 milligrams a week. That be flexible with that. Some of you would react better, and Mike, he may have, reacted better at 100 milligrams or 200 milligrams versus 1,000 milligrams. And some people are
certainly now, Steve. Certainly now,
Some people are better right in the middle, 500 milligrams. So it always, it's always, there's another thing with social media influencers and people who like follow them and stuff. Everyone's so rock hard on their ideology. Just because 500 milligrams of testosterone a week might work for you really well and does good things for you. I've got clients on half of that who end up with gyno, who are very, very lean because they can't handle even 200 or 250 milligrams of testosterone. So just because something worked for you doesn't mean it won't work for anyone. That's what I like about Mike overall. He's not preachy. He doesn't come off like, oh, what works for me, because this is fitness and everybody's going to be different. And everybody,
do you know what, Steve?
You know what I'm saying?
Do you know what, Steve? With the social media aspect again, and I'll finish off on this comment, guys. Right. So the problem sometimes with social media is it almost, especially if you start to make money and you're recognized for looking a certain particular way. And this is why, again, Mike's really good in this regards. He hasn't made himself stay super strong, super muscular by using the high amounts of PEDs, in my opinion, till now. What he's done is he's adapted early. He's made his name early. He was real strong, very muscular, certainly before, and he's still kind of muscular and healthy looking now. And the problem sometimes with social media is it kind of forces you to look a certain way all the fucking time, which unfortunately, when the association with PEDs means you're on gear all the fucking time, and your health must be impacted. And we know that this has happened. Just thinking of one person, Ziz, staying on all the time and fucking himself up and being dead way too young. We've seen that a lot. And yet here we are, Mike, looking great, looking healthy, being educational, still looking physically a specimen, just not a 250, 260 pound specimen that he once was. So there's an argument to be made again about being a positive role model. I've done what I've done. I've done what I needed to do. I don't need to do that anymore, but I can still be out there pushing a good message, talking about nutrition, talking about training, and showing you guys how to get the most out of your weights. So that's great, Steve, and I like that. I wish I had more time to watch more videos because I think there's a message in there exactly like I've just said. So let us know what you think, guys. Come onto the forums, post comments below. What do you think about Mike? Do you think he's changed? Do you still think he's on high amounts of steroids? Are we talking out of our asses? What do you reckon? Let us know in the comments below and on the forums. Please note, we are not doctors and opinions are ours. It is our view and based on our experience and views on the topic. A podcast of informational purposes and entertainment only. The freedom of speech and the First Amendment apply.